Hi, this is Max Verstappen, and you're listening to Speed City.
Welcome back to the fastest hour in radio, Speed City.
All right, welcome back to your Sunday night with Speed City. We are going to shift gears and talk some two-wheel, some MotoGP. We got MotoGP coming to Austin for the 10th time.
Next weekend.
Next weekend, that's right. And we have a man who's probably pretty excited about the recent success of the Ducati brand. We have Vito from Ducati Austin. Vito, how are you, buddy?
Hey, I'm great. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Well, it's we've been hanging out with you for 10 years talking Ducati, and it's really exciting for me to talk to you because back in the day, 10 years ago, when Ducati wasn't at the top of the charts in MotoGP, we talked about trying to get some attention and the dominance of Honda, and then followed by the dominance of Marc Marquez. And now you guys are getting the same dominance criticism now. I thought that was kind of cool, actually.
Yeah, it is. It's sort of funny because, no one really complained a whole lot when Honda was doing it, and Yamaha then had their years. And, Ducati really just filled a void because the other brands really weren't taking care of their satellite teams, and Ducati came in and filled it. A perfect example is Yamaha with RNF. They were only giving them 1-year contracts, and Aprilia came in and, gave them multi-year. And you can't blame a team for wanting stability. And, the other ones weren't really taking care of their customers really at the end of the day. And Ducati sort of came in and took care of it.
Yeah. Well, I want to make sure everybody knows everything about Vito because you guys, not only you have Ducati Austin, but you guys have the San Antonio shops. Y'all have got, what, Ducati, Triumph, Aprilia, and Moto Guzzi, is that right?
Yes. We just moved into our new facility at the end of January, actually, last day. And we're in there now. It's about 95%, but we're in there. We're just sold our first Aprilia last week. It's pretty exciting.
Cool
brand. I used to actually race them myself.
Nice.
But I'm a Ducati guy through and through, to be honest. So
what I love about that combination, though, is you've got Moto Guzzi, you've got Aprilia and Ducati. And so, if you are a sort of, true blue Italian love of the great motorcycle, then you can't go wrong. And then you've got Triumph for idiots like me from Britain.
Yeah, and Aprilia.
You weren't supposed to agree with that.
Well, not about the Britain part.
Okay.
British. I mean, you guys are young. You got your Moto too, so we'll give you that.
There you go.
Yeah, and there's a couple good riders out there.
Yeah. Well, Jonathan, you were going to say something about the Ducati discussion.
Well, I was going to say, tough question, Vito, but, we've always known. I mean, as you well know, we came sort of together when I was in World Superbikes, and of course, it is a famed, dominance that they had for many, many, many years in Ducati at World Superbike level, especially when I started in World Superbikes at the height of Carl Fogarty's career. And that continued with the likes of Corsa and many others. But what do you think? We always used to say Ducati are the most innovative. They brought the fins in first. They brought all the wings in first. Then it was, wow, the Ducati in a straight line. Look at it from above here at Qatar. It's incredible. So it always had these elements. But what is it last year, do you think, that made it the Invincible?
They just kept on plugging away. And I think, honestly, sort of a changing of the guard, actually, when it came even to the riders. They've always been sort of the team wanted, sort of like in Formula One, you want an experienced rider, and then you want, sort of your new guy. And Ducati just decided they needed to, make a big break and big change. And they've heard it over the years about, the handling of the bike wasn't there. It didn't turn quick enough. It wasn't good enough in that direction. And they've honestly just plugged away and plugged away and plugged away until they made a bike that really is just a great all-around bike. And like you said, Jonathan, they've been very innovative. And I think it's really all three of the European brands, KTM, Aprilia, and Ducati, are all, sort of, they're way more innovative, quicker to react than the two, Japanese brands that have been very dominant. They're a little bit more like old school, big, huge corporate, dynamic. And Ducati has just been constantly testing, constantly bringing new parts to the table. And they had that rap for a long time that they wouldn't listen to the riders, and I think that's changed.
Yeah, and also seemingly what's changed in sort of my era of MotoGP is that instead of you having the factory Ducati team with the Desmond, Sedici GP23, and then Pramac or whoever else, Grassini, and Pramac having a sort of last year's version. This year, all of them are GP23. That's going to help, all boats. All ships. What's the expression?
Rising tide lift all boats.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But is that part of it too? Is that everybody's got the same spec?
So so Pramac and the course team are both all running 23s, where Bezzecchi and Marini they're on 22s.
Mm-hmm.
But the 22 was a great bike, and it's well sorted out. But they really do have just 22s and 23s. Yeah. They're not going like 3 years back or anything like they used to do. It used to be there'd be like, 2 years back, some of the teams running. So they're much more consistent. And, what the other teams are complaining about the dominance is that Ducati's able to take so much data. And the 23, is really very evolutionary from the 22. So you can still get good information off a 22 to a 23. So,
yeah. And well sorted out. I mean, last year, crazy dominance, right?
Yeah. And it's sort of to, like Enya Bastianini last year, who won 4 races, who was on a 21, and Pecco was on the 22, and he struggled at the beginning because they made a lot of changes. So that I think is helping Bezzecchi and Marini, in these first few races.
I also think that from a management point of view, having Paolo Ciabatti and also Davide Tordozzi, who effectively between them were responsible for the last domination of Ducati and World Superbikes. For those who don't know that, because that's my Superbike background showing there. But, I think having that consistency at the top and trusting that they know what they're doing, one an ex-rider, another ex-managing director of both Ducati and World Superbike, there's some pretty good people at the hand of the wheel of the ship,
Yeah. Yeah. And I know you guys were talking earlier about, the comparison of Formula One to MotoGP. Mm-hmm. I'm a big Formula One fan. I'm a Ferrari fan, but they've had no stability at the top. I think it shows for them versus what you're saying, Jonathan, about Ducati, and they have stability, and it just, helps with the success. And same you see in Red Bull versus, some of the other, Ferrari example.
Let me ask you this then. Do you feel, as I do, that Vassar could be the guy to turn the ship at Ferrari then?
I hope so.
Yeah, they need it. They've got a great product. They've got 2 of the greatest drivers. I've said this, all along.
I still think
they got a really fast car, and they cheated with it a couple of years ago. But but that's Formula One. Hey, but it is. But but that's Formula One. You push the rules, and if you don't get caught, that's just fine.
It's only cheating when you get caught.
Right.
Hey, well, speaking of a comparison between Formula One and MotoGP, we've talked about so much of the impact of Drive to Survive a million times, but MotoGP is struggling a little bit with TV ratings. And I just did a quick look this afternoon, and I realized the only live race they're showing in the United States on television, not if you have the app. If you have the MotoGP app, obviously you can get it live, but is COTA. All the rest of them are replayed at good times, though. Typically 1, 2 in the afternoon on Sunday. But what do you think about? I mean, do you think it's what we were saying earlier in the other segment, Vito, that it is, Valentino Rossi's out of the sport. Marquez is on struggled lately. Do you think it's that, or do you think it has to do with the way the television is, or what do you think?
I think it's all those factors. I think for the true MotoGP Formula One fan, like myself, I haven't watched MotoGP on a TV and pretty much since the MotoGP app has been around. And this year, because I've sort of renewed interest in Formula One, because a couple of years I just, I sort of lost interest a little bit because of the Mercedes dominance. But this year I got the Formula One app to watch it. So I can now watch it at whatever time I want, because I usually watch it with friends. So we watch it delayed and stuff. But I think, when a sport is sort of trying to grow, especially in the US, TV plays such a huge part that if it's not broadcast at a convenient and a good time, it's really hard. And for people to start following it, because they don't want to make that investment to go buy an app because they don't really know much about it. And, Formula One did a great job with the, Drive to Survive. I've only watched a few episodes of it, but, it's interesting. It's a little bit reality TV, but, it's a lot of reality TV, but, it's made personalities out of certain people like Gunther Stein, he's like a rock star now,
Yeah.
It's interesting. I I met, I won't say with who, but I talked about the sort of MotoGP version of, of Drive to Survive, a similar sort of thing. And, we were talking, we were criticizing it. We were absolutely trying to pull it apart and go, why is it not as successful as Drive to Survive? And my opinion, and this, this was definitely coming from the heart because I love MotoGP and I love World Superbikes. I've always loved the bikes. I said, it's not through lack of content. You have a better story than Formula One because the drama, the human drama of a MotoGP rider, Marc Marquez is a great example. He is dynamite. When he is on form, he's electric to watch. The coverage of MotoGP is actually better than Formula One because they've been on this onboard cameras and doing dynamic stuff for longer. The graphics are better. The stats are better. And I'm being tough here on Formula One. But generally speaking, if you're talking about a Drive to Survive catalyst, the paddock of MotoGP has bigger stories. The mistake they made is that they subtitled it because most of it is a Spanish run and Spanish based now, or a lot of influenced Spanish, including Marc Marquez and his brother, of course, but many, many, many others. And I think that was a big mistake. And I would go on, Vito. You're dying to get in. What do you think?
No, I'm just saying I 100% agree with you because
the Americans won't do it.
I started watching it. It took me probably 4 attempts before I got through 4 episodes because I just kept on, a little bit of the, even though I'm not a youngster, but the sort of the ADD thing where you're trying to do multi things and now you're trying to, read subtitles and watch a show and you're doing something else, it just made it very difficult for me to sort of follow it and watch it because it was all subtitled and it was not as enjoyable as Drive to Survive where you can listen to most of it, in English.
Yeah, and I think if you look at the sort of examples of Fastest and many others, one of the suggestions I gave was why not bring a celebrity like a Ewan McGregor who's taken part in many a documentary on motorbikes because he loves them and he loves the sport and he's been to MotoGP and World Superbikes many, many, many times. And it needs that kind of, it's like the Wrexham feel. You need a little bit of Hollywood in there, and they're still. And you need you need to be, without being funny, you need somebody to be enthusiastic about what amazing aliens, we used to call them aliens, these guys are to do what they do. They're when astronauts get excited about these guys, that tells you something.
Yeah, and Jonathan, you asked me to watch it with a critical eye. And I actually took notes, and that was the first thing I wrote down. And when I talked to you, you were like, I did the same thing about
Americans won't
the
watch subtitles. That's why French art movies, are so rare here, whereas in Europe, people do speak several languages. In America, they speak one language.
All right, we need to take a break, but when we come back, I want to talk to Vito about the sprint race format in MotoGP as compared to the sprint race format in Formula One, how it's working in MotoGP, et cetera, et cetera. You're listening to your Sunday Night with Speed City, back after a quick break. We got a comment from Paul Bryan on the stream. He says, present from the show open, present and accounted for. He says, but just observing, he doesn't know from Shinola about MotoGP. I can't believe that, Paul.
Well, Paul Bryan, you listen and imbibe and come to MotoGP if you can, but certainly get the app. Vito, I'll tell you another subject I wouldn't mind talking about is I totally agree with Vito that MotoGP's app is so good.
Oh, yeah.
That you and the replays and the highlights and the video. You
I
go
think
to their
F1
website.
may have caught it though, because F1's app is now phenomenal.
It's I don't think I think the MotoGP is better. The one that's really not there is World Superbike needs to get there.
Yeah, no. It's disappeared.
Why wouldn't they cut and paste the app from MotoGP?
Well, I noticed that the
World
MotoGP
Superbikes.
app now has a button to World Superbikes, but But no, it's
Yeah.
falling in popularity, I think, and that is important to you because you sell road bikes, you don't sell MotoGP bikes,
And
that, you know,
World Superbike's some of the best racing
yeah,
out there.
exactly, exactly. And but what I was going to say was one of my thoughts on that is, you know, these apps are so good that's why you don't get an NBC, you know, overspending on actual terrestrial coverage.
Well, ESPN spent $90 million a year now for the Formula One coverage,
but they're not really doing anything with it.
No, yeah.
Go ahead. And what the apps really do too is you get all the behind the scenes story. You get way better commentary.
Yep.
On
honestly,
boards.
You don't break to commercial every 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also think MotoGP, unlike Formula One, lacks really good, and I'd like to start doing it. And if you've got some ideas, Vito, and I'd love to involve you in it, but I'd like to start doing, you know, a proper MotoGP podcast. My old mucker Keith Hewen does one.
Yeah, I watch it all the time.
Is it good?
Yeah, I actually.
We're coming back from break.
Never knew. Yeah, it's a great show. I love watching it.
Hi, this is Mario Andretti, and this is Speed City.
Welcome back to the fastest hour in radio, Speed City.
All right, we're talking MotoGP tonight because we got MotoGP coming back to COTA this coming weekend. And we have Vito from Ducati Austin and Ducati Triumph Aprilia Moto Guzzi from San Antonio. But when we went to break, Vito, I said I wanted to ask you about how the sprint race format was working out in MotoGP and compare that to Formula One now that you're watching both of those.
I think MotoGP, it's going to be, for the fan, it's great. There's more racing. There's more action on Saturday. I would think from the riders' perspective and seeing the follow-up from the first few races, you know, they only had 18 to 22 people out there. It's got to be more stressful, tiring because it's compressed. And they didn't do like Formula One, which I think would have been a better scenario, is to sort of gently get into it, not go from 0 to 21 sprint races. Because now it compresses. They don't have the time to do testing. Friday now is so important because you try to get into, you know, basically the top 10 get into, so they don't have to go to Q1. So it's just more stressful, more tiring. And I think when you get to the more physical tracks, like COTA is a very physical track, you know, there's going to be just more wear and tear on the riders. And no matter what, like Dorna and they all say about, you know, it's the same amount of wear and tear on the bike and the rider because they didn't really increase the laps. But racing versus practice is just two different things. I mean, even when I was just doing club racing, you know, WERA and CMRA, practice is way different than racing. It's just a whole different level of focus, concentration, you know, and you're more worn out from riding, you know, 8 laps in a sprint race than 30 minutes of practice.
Yeah.
Because you're 100% on.
Yeah.
So I think they should have sort of waded into it a little bit more than just went 21 races. And you know, we'll see how the year goes, how it shakes out with the riders.
I'll go even stronger and say I think they've shot themselves in the foot here. I understand that everybody wants to see a race. I'd love to see a race on a Saturday, and I think Formula One versus MotoGP is very different here. Because knowing the mentality and having known Kevin Schwantz, who will be with me next weekend again, and Colin Edwards, and you know, all of these guys, and got to know them, they are willing to lay their body on the line come race day.
Yeah,
whatever the race is, and I mean, it could be a moped for all they care, but that's their headset, right? But they do it so well that they come away with, like Marc Marquez, few times when they actually get hurt. Valentino Rossi is a good example. He managed to do that longevity because he broke his leg once. I think that was about the biggest major incident he had. And, you know, there are other incidents where there's freak incidents like Simoncelli's, which Valentino and Colin actually were involved in. And, you know, and things can go wrong. But the point is, if you tell them that they're racing Saturday, they're going to give you the 110% to a man. Every one of them does that. And that's my fear. Is that if you do that 42 times in a year, and I think that's how many races in total, because not everyone's got a sprint race. Okay.
Gosh,
The chances of you ending up, we've already got Espargaro out for probably a while and a couple of others. You know, I mean, now Marc Marquez should be the king of COTA, but he's coming back from an injury again. He missed out on, you know, so Marquez's career that shines so brightly could continue to be rattled with an early retirement at the age of 30 because he just can't do it anymore.
Heck of an impact, by the way.
Yeah.
That crash at Marquez, he rammed into the back of, who was it? Who was it, Vito? Do you remember?
Oliveira.
Oliveira, yeah.
Oliveira.
But that was a huge impact.
And Jorge Martin.
Yeah.
But that's Mark for you. And no one's surprised by it. I mean, it was early in the race, and you're thinking, what are you doing?
Yeah.
But that's Mark.
Yeah.
And he's not an idiot. He's one, you know, he's so skillful, but it can go wrong. And unfortunately, you know, a broken collarbone, a broken femur, these are realities which aren't realities in Formula One. I'm not saying it's less dangerous, but, you know, I do think there is a different mentality, and I do think that MotoGP should really review it after a year. And mark my words, if you like, I think next year we'll go to shorter formats, perhaps, where you start on, you know, maybe you do a free practice on Friday afternoon, and then you come back Saturday, and you I don't know, but I just think we'll get shorter format weekends. But I don't think this having 2 races in a weekend in MotoGP, not Formula One, is correct.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree. Honestly, I think Vito hit it on the head, and when he's saying they just dove in and said, "We're just going to do this for every single weekend," and I feel like the riders are going to end up going, you know, exhausted and ultimately getting hurt. It's crazy.
And also you might get to, I mean, you know, motorcycle racing is different than Formula One. You know, Formula One is about the long game and looking at the intricacies. With MotoGP, it is hell bent for leather from the flag. And that's what makes it so exciting. So if you have a Saturday race, which is, you know, bombastic and awesome, you know, you're almost shy to come back on Sunday. And then you could go away Sunday night disappointed after Jack Miller wins by 30 seconds or something. You know what I mean? And so you then go back into the office on Monday, because really you get to talk to your pals, and certainly in Vito's case, he's in the showroom and everybody comes through the door wants to talk to him about MotoGP or World Superbike. You know, you may not be as emphatic about it, and Saturday was a long time ago.
Hey, Vito, I want to ask you, what is, you know, we've heard a lot of riders talk about COTA itself, especially early days, whether it was best suited for motorcycle racing. You know, it was probably ultimately designed for Formula One more than anything, but
you say that it was defined by
MotoGP
MotoGP
but
world
that's
champion.
True. Then that's where I was leading to, is that what have we seen? Now we've got 10 years under our belt. Do you think that those concerns, what do you think about COTA and MotoGP?
Maybe I'm biased because it's in my backyard, but I think it's a great track. As a motorcyclist, I go ride it whenever there's a motorcycle track day there. I'm going to be riding it right after MotoGP. There's a track day on the Monday. It's a great track because it is a Formula One track in that there's runoff. It's well designed for you know, the speeds that you can reach, but it's a relatively safe track, you know, for a motorcyclist, and it's very technical. There's, you know, high speeds, you know, low speeds, 3 hairpins or 2, but I like it, and I think it's it's got a bad rap for motorcyclists because how bumpy it was.
Yeah.
But it's honestly the last year, you know, I rode it last year, probably 6 weekends. It's way better. I think I love it. I mean, I got this year or last year, really, I got to go ride at Misano. You know, European tracks are just beautifully smooth. I rode Mugello and Misano, and, you know, they're beautifully smooth and nice, but I think COTA is a great track. I think it's still probably the best place to, you know, in the U.S.
I agree. You know, Vito, I kind of want to ask you a sort of off-topic question, but I just wonder, you know, I mean, you're about selling these things, and they're not cheap. You know, and I wonder how the market is for sales of motorcycles. Sort of, I haven't really spoken to you, you know, so post-COVID or during COVID. You know, did people, you know, find motorcycle riding the only way to get out because you could have a helmet and get out of the flat or out of the house? or was it a tough time like a lot of other industries?
So, it was really interesting. Yeah. The first few months, like everyone else, no one knew what was going on, what COVID really was, how contagious it was. It was a lot of panic. We weren't sure whether we were going to be open, closed down, or shut down because Austin had a lot of rules and regulations. We pretty much had the showroom where it was by appointment, 3 people in it max at one time. Everything was going on. But overall, motorcycle sales that year were honestly phenomenal because it was one of those things you could do by yourself.
Yeah, safely.
You were by definition you were social distancing.
Yeah,
on a motorcycle, on a helmet. So it was honestly a great year for sales and for service. Our biggest thing was having enough staff to run it. The part of the business that really suffered because we're a brick and mortar place was apparel because for 3 months we wouldn't let anyone try on anything. And then we had plastic gloves for them to put on. We had all these things because no one knew what was going on. So most people were just buying things basically online and having it shipped to their house. So that was the only part of the business that really suffered. And Ducati honestly I think more than most other OEMs did a great job of having supply. So we had a great year in 2021. 2022 started catching up a little bit with the supply chain issues. But overall, really, it was very strong, 21 and 22. 23 now, there's other factors, and the whole some of the banking crisis and people's concern about the economy that has sort of slowed things down. But we just had a very good March. And a little bit of concern, of course, but I think overall it's the brands that we carry are very strong brands. They're in particular Ducati. It's a little less subject to some of the economic stuff. Mm-hmm. That's more of a premium thing. It's sort of like, not necessarily, I wish it was like Porsche, but it's similar in that nature. Mm-hmm. The people that are going to buy them are probably still going to buy them.
I think I want to argue with something you said, Jonathan. You said they're expensive. They're expensive compared to Hondas and Yamahas, but they're way cheap compared to a Porsche or other toy. I mean, let's be honest.
They're faster.
20 exactly. 25 grand will buy you a really nice Ducati, and in today's car market,
it's a fair point. Yeah, it's a fair point.
I mean, what is the average Ducati? About 20, low 20s?
Now, yeah, the average probably works out closer to 20 because the super bikes now are a V4S, which honestly we don't have any on the showroom because the demand for those are only pre-sold. And those are a little over 30,000.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And there's nothing more fun than walking out to your garage and seeing a shiny Ducati. I mean, that is
well, thrills per second. There's no question. I mean, every stop.
Yeah.
When I go, because I've taken a few of Vito's bikes out, and I'd go around Austin praying for the lights to stop so I could have another start. I remember one of the first bikes I ever rode from Ducati Austin was a Street Fighter, and that basically is, it's a super bike.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's darn fast, but it was known as the Street Fighter. And that thing, I mean, every time you take off from a green light, by the time you get across the road, by the time you get across the next section, you're in hog heaven.
Hey, Vito, I know when you came on during the break, you said you were feeling a little under the weather a little bit, but because you said that you're a Formula One fan now, I really want to keep you for the final segment. Can you do it? 10 more minutes?
Yeah, sure.
Awesome.
Yeah, sure.
All right, well, let's take our last break. When we come back, we're going to talk a little Formula One. You're listening to Sunday Night with Speed City. Back after a break.